One of the first events I got to do this year with my Daughters of the American Revolution group is that we went on a highly anticipated tour of the lesser known historical sites in Moncks Corner, South Carolina. The weather was not great, but for some of the more enthusiastic members, such as myself, the cold and rain did not deter us from meeting at the old Santee Canal Park early that morning. Our first stop were the ruins of the 1706 St. John's, Berkeley Parish, which is known today as the Biggin Church ruins. This church has been rebuilt several times over the years, but after the last fire, it was left unrepaired. Today, you can visit the ruins and explore the old graves. Interestingly, this churchyard is still in use today. While here, we learned about John Palmer, who was born in 1715 and grew up to marry and father 3 sons. After 1733, he inherited the Gravel Hill Plantation and eventually owned 10,000 acres, making his fortune in lumber, turpentine, and ship mast construction. Regardless of working closely with the wealthy loyalists of the day, Palmer, also referred to as Turpentine John, was a patriot. In the summer of 1780, after the fall of Charleston, John and his brother Joseph were seized and brought here to be humiliated before being tossed into an underground vault tomb as traitors. The brothers remained in the dark, damp crypt among the bones and smells of death. Luckily, the church was being used as a storehouse, so their captors would occasionally put a bucket of water or food scraps into the crypt. After the brothers were released, they jumped into a nearby creek to remove the filth that was covering them. They then traveled very carefully through the swamp, the 10 miles to the Gravel Hill Plantation. They were so disoriented and malnourished that it took the brothers 2 days to travel the mere 10 miles. When they finally arrived at the plantation, the family could not even recognize them due to their poor appearance. Today, you can still see the crypt, which appears only as a small opening, not easily noticed by the unknowing eye. Next, we convoyed to the Watu Bridge. Today, this is a popular destination for fishermen and boaters. This area was once part of a 12,000-acre land grant to James Colleton, whose family remained loyal to the Crown. After the war, the land was divided and sold to Patriot citizens. Interestingly, today there is a concrete block in the parking lot in which a small hole allows water from an underground spring to flow out. I probably would not have noticed it if somebody hadn't brought it to my attention, and I have never seen anything like it. It is believed by some that Hezekiah Mayhem and Colonel Horry, with a detached group of Marion's men, set fire to 2 British boats and destroyed the bridge in this location. However, there are those who do not believe that this happened. In 1979, Berkeley County performed an extensive search of this area in which no boat remains were found. However, what is known is that Francis Marion used these nearby swamps and guerrilla warfare techniques to help the South beat the British. It is also known that on August 29, 1782, a British foraging party commanded by Major Thomas Fraser attacked Marion nearby. The Patriots had seized the Colleton Plantation, which was located across from this creek, and they had been camping there. During this attack, Marion and his men used the nearby trees and slave quarters as cover. While the Patriots did claim victory, they had lost their wagon of supplies during the British retreat. From shortly after the skirmish until the British abandoned South Carolina in December, Marion made Watu his headquarters. The day the British finally left Charleston, Marion dismissed his brigade and made his way to his own ruined plantation of Pond Bluff. Next, we drove to Mepkin Abbey, where we stopped to explore the gift shop before heading to a grassy area near the river for a picnic. Today, Mepkin is a place that many people come to tour the beautiful grounds, hear classical concerts, and attend events like weddings. The Moncks who live here once sold chicken eggs, but now they sell local jams, honeys, and fresh mushrooms that they grow themselves. This area was also owned by the Colleton family, but in 1762 the land here was sold to Henry Lawrence and became the Coming Tree Plantation. In 1779, Henry Lawrence, a patriot, was captured by the British ship while at sea. He was then imprisoned in the Tower of London for nearly 2 years. After the war, Lawrence was used as a prisoner exchange for Lord Cornwallis and returned home. When he arrived, he saw that his home had been burned to the ground. In 1926, the land was purchased by J.W. Johnson and was 10,000 acres upon his death. In 1936, Johnson's daughter sold the land, and in 1949, a large portion was given to the Roman Catholic Church. The grounds here are very beautifully landscaped. Rows of magnolia trees, flowering bushes, trees draped in Spanish moss, and large oaks that's limbs are covered by ferns. There are also religious statues, Charleston-style gates, and an arbor for weddings from which the Cooper River can be seen. In addition, there are 2 beautiful wood carvings that were done on a massive tree which was uprooted during Hurricane Hugo. I was told that Mepkin is an Indian word for serenity, and that fits with how I felt walking the grounds. A short distance from where we had lunch was the Lawrence family cemetery.
Plantation. He was the one that was involved with the Continental Congress and then was held in the Tower of London. The only American held in the Tower of London during the Revolutionary War. And where's John? John Lawrence, his son, who the same week, or within a week or two, of Marion's last battle here at Watu Creek. He was killed down off the Combahee River when the British were on a foraging party down there. Y'all know probably that the last year of the war in South Carolina, 1782, the British were pretty much totally withdrawn into Charleston, but they had to come out and forage for provisions. They had to they had John's Island, so they were able to keep cattle and some crops and stuff over there, but they would send these foraging parties out. And that's what happened when Marion had his last, it was a foraging party that fought Marion over here at Watu Creek. John Lawrence went down when they knew there was a British foraging party coming up by boat in the Combahee River, and they went riding up to confront these guys and got sort of ambushed by the British, and he was shot, but it was only like less than 6 months before the end of the war.
Well, a little bit.
If you go down to downtown Savannah, they got a reproduction of an earthenwork redoubt, smaller than Fort Fairlawn, but probably the original one would have looked very much like that.
Okay.
And in late 1779, before the British took Charleston, the Americans went down there and they tried to drive the British out of Savannah or whatever. And it was a very, very hostile, bloody battle, and John Lawrence and Francis Marion and his men were right in the thick of it when they were assaulting this redoubt. And y'all know the story of Sergeant Jasper with Battle of Sullivan's Island, where the flag got shot down, and he went and put the staff on the flag and put it up there, and so that the British would not know that they were surrendering. You know that story.
Yes.
Spring Hill Redoubt is where Sergeant Jasper was killed. So he was in the same kind of situation. Well, not the same situation, but they were assaulting this redoubt, and he was killed there in Savannah. John Lawrence then, I think, was at the fall of Charleston when Charleston was captured, and in May of 1780, he was taken as a prisoner, but somehow got exchanged and was sent over to France as an ambassador. And he was just a young whippersnapper, and apparently he did not do business at all like Benjamin Franklin. Benjamin Franklin said, we need to get this guy out of here. He's going to really mess us up. Yeah. But apparently he did get some immediate French support, money and whatnot. Franklin was taking his time trying to and Franklin did a tremendous job of all this. But at any rate, Lawrence came back over, and sure enough, he turns up with Hamilton, Alexander Hamilton, and he. Have you ever heard? If you've read about the Battle of Yorktown, and the redoubt number 10, which was a American assault on the French took one redoubt and the Americans took another one. Hamilton was leading the charge up one side, and John Lawrence was leading the side up the other side. So he fought at the Battle of Yorktown. After that, he came back to South Carolina, and we talked about Light Horse Harry Lee earlier. Lawrence and Lee had a plan. Now this is getting into 1782 now, so the British are pretty much withdrawn into Charleston, but they have John's Island, and they've got foraging parties going out to get food and whatnot. Lee and Lawrence, Greene didn't want him to do this. Greene was down in the low country by then, and he didn't want him to do this, but he finally gave him permission. They were going to kind of go across the Stono River, where they could wade across at low tide, get these men over and attack the British on John's Island and try and take over John's Island and help cut off their food supply. Well, it didn't. It was a thwarted effort because they didn't have some of the new Continentals coming in, and Lawrence went to find them, and Lee was over there, and he was getting cut off, and the tide was coming in. They had to wade up to their necks pretty much to get back, and so that effort failed. But he was involved with Light Horse Harry and so forth. Shortly after that, Light Horse Harry retired. Well, goes back to Virginia. Later becomes the governor of Virginia and all that. But Lawrence took over as the head of Lee's Legion, his mounted cavalry. And Lee kind of thought that was a bad idea because he was so impulsive. But it turns out that and Lee's men, after riding with Lee for so long, didn't particularly like him either. But it wasn't very long after that, in the summer of 782, that he was leading this attack down in the Combahee River and was shot and killed months before the British left Charleston.
So do we know anything about this stone? This caught my attention. We got daughters.
Yeah.
They're all daughters.
And they were young.
1835, 1835, 1831, and 1836. 39, I'm sorry. They all died together? To the memory of Emma Lawrence, daughter of Edward R. Lawrence and Margaret Holmes Lawrence.
22nd of December, 21st of March. So they didn't die at the same time.
No, but I'm just saying, this one was January of 39. This one was December 35. This one was March 31, 35. And that
31.
one was
Yeah.
October 31.
But see, they
All
were young,
daughters.
so they could have been sick.
It must have been. It spread through the
Yeah.
whole family because they were all daughters.
Yeah.
Margaret, Anne. There is this one. That one says Margaret also.
You know the story of Henry Lawrence being cremated? Yeah, Henry's gravestone there. His body's not laying in there. He was cremated. You know that story? I don't know about his head, but we were talking about the daughter, children dying. Well, he had a house down in Ansonboro area, what's now Ansonboro in Charleston, and one of his daughters died. And back then they didn't embalm, and so they would have, before the funeral, they would have the body laid out in the parlor. And his daughter was laid out in the parlor of their house, and it was, I guess, warm weather. They had the windows open, and people were coming to visit, and a breeze blew, and a curtain blew across her face, or whatever is the story I got. I don't know exactly. But anyway, she moved. And it turns out that she recovered and she lived. She was in a coma or something. But Henry said, "When I die, I want you to guarantee that I'm dead."
Oh, you're dead. Not mostly dead, but all the way dead.
So, okay, we got a hill here where the grave is. Got a hill there where everybody was meeting at the gardens. And the next hill up, they say that's where they built his funeral pyre. And they burned him, and his ashes are in that grave.
Makes sense.
I'm going to be burned and spread all over Berkeley County.
There you go.
Don't be sniffing when the day comes.
Next was our most anticipated location, and that was the Middleburg Plantation. This was exciting to us because this is the oldest wooden plantation south of Virginia and has been privately owned until recently. The Middleburg Plantation was built in 1697 by French Huguenots who came to America to escape persecution from the Catholic Church. It is believed that this is the first house to ever have a front and back porch. Another interesting fact about this porch is that it is rumored that Tarleton actually marked it on his way out of town so that the home would not be burned. During the Civil War, this house was also seized by the Porter Raiders, and the two generals carved their names into the lower window with their rings and can still be seen today. While the house has been modernized and renovated over the years, the wooden floor remains original. The dining room even still has original cabinets, and china, including mourning china and slave china, have been found on the grounds. Over time, this house was owned by the Simmons, the Lucases, and the Balls, the latter of which owned the Jar Company. Anne Simmon Ball even carved her name in her upstairs bedroom window. Carolina Gold Rice was milled on the property until 1929. Behind the house, there are two structures, one which was the servants' quarters, and another which was a place where food was prepared and laundry cleaned. Both of these houses are now very modernized and allow overnight guests and wedding parties. In addition, there is another structure that you can rent or stay in on property, and it was my favorite. This building is originally where they would dry the rice. However, it is rumored that it was a slave jail due to the bars on the windows, but that has been disproven. While here, we even got to walk down towards the river to see the old rice milling machine and what is left of its steam engine. We had a wonderful time on our tour, and it is exciting to know that such a long treasured house is finally open to the public. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please remember to like it, and as always, thanks for watching.